Today on the show, we're going to be talking about the history of Jessica Jones. If you didn't know that for a while, her and Luke Cage broke up after they were married and had a baby together because Jessica decided to register in the Superhuman Registration Act while Luke Cage was in the Resistance, then this show is for you. So Jessica Campbell was born in New York and she attended Midtown High with Peter Parker, and she had the hugest crush on him, and one day she was going to confess to him. So she followed him to a lab, but suddenly Peter felt very sick, so she didn't get a chance to confess to Peter, and even though she tried following him out the building, she was almost hit by a car and she had to be saved, and then she was really embarrassed, so she went home. That night though, Jessica did what all horny teenagers do. 2 pictures of the Human Torch. You know what I mean.
Sex, sexy sex, boner, uterus.
Then a few days later, she went on a trip to Disney World with her family. You see, her dad's boss, Tony Stark, was able to get the whole family tickets to the resort. But on her way home, her and her brother argued the entire time. It was pretty much a mobile argument to the point that her dad had to turn around, shout at the kids, but then he crashed his car into a military convoy that was carrying chemicals. Some of the chemicals fell on Jessica during the crash, but the rest of her family died. Jessica fell into a long coma, and she was only awoken by the first coming of Galactus. Upon waking up, she was placed in the Moore House for Wayward Children and was eventually adopted by the Joneses. She was re-enrolled at her old school, and in my opinion, this was actually a very bad move because naturally, everyone in her school knew about her, and Jessica got the very great nickname Coma Girl. Peter actually tried to be her friend because obviously he'd lost family, and when he tried explaining this to her, Jessica wasn't willing to listen to him. She just mistook this as him pitying her, and she was not the type of person that wanted pity, so she ran away after lashing out at Peter, and while she was running, she suddenly found herself flying. She tried to control this new ability but couldn't do it, and eventually fell into the river and was drowning fast, and Thor had to save her. This is actually one of my favorite parts in the entire history of Jessica Jones because Thor actually corrects Jessica on her language, which I can relate to quite a bit. Then one day, after a conversation with her dad about why some heroes like the Fantastic Four are praised, but other heroes like Spider-Man are seen as weird, and after seeing Spider-Man and Sandman having a fight in her own classroom, Jessica decided to become the hero Jewel. If I'm honest, her superhero career was very short. We know very little of it, but apparently it was kind of boring. You see, eventually she'd go to stop a fight in a restaurant, and there she found Zebediah Killgrave. And Zebediah Killgrave tells Jessica to take off her clothes, and this man's got mind control powers. So Jessica is about to do it, but then he stops her and tells her to go and beat up the police. And then after this, Jessica is held prisoner by him for months. He never physically touches her in a sexual way, but he makes her want to be raped by him. This was one of the first times in comics that it really showed the darker side of powers like mind control and even mind reading. They're 2 very invasive things. Your mind is your escape when nothing else works. It's your last escape. To have that controlled or read is just incredibly invasive, and I really am happy that there's a comic there that's exploring that concept. 8 months of this torture would go on by, and Killgrave eventually reads a news article about Daredevil, and Killgrave hates heroes, so he tells Jessica to go and kill Daredevil. And Jessica actually flies out of his range, but because she'd been under his mind control for so long, she couldn't tell the difference between her own will and his will anymore. So even though she wanted to stop herself, she couldn't stop herself, so as soon as she got to the Avengers mansion, she tried killing Scarlet Witch, only to be beaten up by the rest of the Avengers, and she actually had to be flown away by Ms. Marvel, who knew about Jessica, to save her. After this, she fell back into a coma and received psychic therapy from Jean Grey of the X-Men. And she basically helped to sort out what was her will, what was Killgrave's will, and she installed a failsafe in Jessica's mind, so if she ever fell under mind control again, she could simply break out of it. And after this, Jessica woke up, and she was actually offered a job with S.H.I.E.L.D. on the Avengers. But Jessica says, so after I was captured, after I've proven that I don't have what it takes to be a hero, you want me to keep up with this life? You want me to stay in this world? No, that's sick and that's disgusting, and I'm leaving all of you forever because none of you cared that I was missing. And after this, she just walks away. Shortly after this, she does become the Vigilante Nitress, and this is actually when she meets Luke Cage. This was very short-lived, and it was only really done to sort of give us a way to know how Luke Cage and Jessica actually met. Jessica would then open up Alias Investigations. We're just going to go over a few highlights of her time in Alias Investigations because there was a lot and I could be sat here for like 3 days explaining all of it. Well, if you watched the Jessica Jones Netflix series, this might sound a little bit familiar. One day, she had a client who found out that his wife was cheating on him. So Jessica had to go and get proof, and when she got the proof, this client was a little bit unhappy with this. So Jessica threw him through her office window. There was actually a time when Steve Keaton, a presidential candidate, was trying to slander Captain America's reputation. Eventually, it turned out that Steve Keaton was actually being controlled by a bigger corporation that wanted to control America for themselves, and Jessica was actually able to work with S.H.I.E.L.D. to stop this. J. Jonah Jameson eventually hired Jessica to work for the Daily Bugle, but he kept insulting her, and this obviously didn't make her happy, and she wasn't very happy with the Daily Bugle to begin with because they weren't that nice to heroes, so Jessica decided that she was going to take all of the money that she was given for her investigation from the Daily Bugle and give it to orphans and hungry children. And it was really, really sweet. But it's around this time that she starts dating Scott Lang. But it's also worth mentioning that she kind of had an on-off affair with Luke Cage. She was able to find the missing Spider-Woman, Mattie Franklin, who was being harvested by her own boyfriend for mutant growth hormone. Then eventually, a woman called Kim would hire Jessica to find a man named Killgrave. You see, this man named Killgrave came into a restaurant one day and he told 34 people to stop breathing, and these people died. Jessica knew that it could only be her Killgrave because he's got the name Killgrave and he can control minds, but her Killgrave was locked on the raft at this point, and when she went to the raft to question him, he didn't give her any answers. He didn't admit to anything. He just kind of mocked Jessica and told her that she was just a character in a comic wanting the reader's approval. Then shortly after this, she would spend a night with Scott and wake up to find ants swarming all over Scott's dead body. Killgrave then turns up and tells Jessica that she's only seeing this because Killgrave wants her to see it. And then he tells her to see her worst nightmare, and she sees Scott, Luke Cage, and Ms. Marvel, Carol Danvers, her best friend, in a threesome together. While Jessica's seeing her worst nightmare, Killgrave tells everyone on the street nearby to beat up the person to their left till that person is dead. So the whole street breaks out into a riot, and he did this to attract the attention of other superheroes. This is when Jessica has a vision of Jean Grey, who tells her that she can break out of Killgrave's mind control. So Jessica does exactly this and beats up Killgrave until his body has to be carried away on a stretcher. After all was said and done, Jessica did have one last thing to say. She turns around to Scott and says that she's 3 months pregnant and he is not the dad. The next day she meets up with Luke Cage and tells him that she's pregnant, it's his baby, and she wants to keep it. So the two of them say, right, new chapter. But things weren't bad after this, things were great. Jessica moves in with Luke, she gets a job at the Daily Bugle, running a new article about superheroes every week, so she could show superheroes in a positive light. Though before she revealed that she was pregnant, she did insist on health insurance and she insisted on a stable contract. Now this did come at a bit of a cost. You see, once the Daily Bugle found out that Jessica was pregnant, they were kind of like, hey, we want exclusive coverage over your baby's birth. Can we do that? And she kind of had to say yes to get the contract that she wanted, which, you know, is kind of okay. A series of events eventually led to the Daily Bugle trying to out Norman Osborn as the Green Goblin, which was a terrible idea. Jessica would go to the Oscorp building and an explosion would go off while she was inside of it. She would be knocked outside, caught by Spider-Man, and she would have like this mid-air fight with the Green Goblin. Osborn would escape, but Jessica went straight to the hospital to make sure her baby was okay. And everything was fine and great. But Luke Cage wasn't happy about this, so he went off to reveal Osborn's secret identity to the public. When a teenage superhuman group that seemed to be imitating the Avengers popped up, calling themselves the Young Avengers, Jessica was one of the 3 heroes, alongside Captain America and Iron Man, that tried stopping them from doing this. Naturally, the teenagers did not listen, and one of these teenagers was actually Cassie Lang. So Jessica would go to Cassie Lang's mother and be like, "You know your daughter is trying to imitate her father, right? Your daughter has become some kind of ant girl." The kids continued to be heroes anyway, it just didn't stop them, and then Jessica had to interview them for the Daily Bugle, so she got to know them on a very personal level, and she related a lot to Kate Bishop, because it turned out that Kate Bishop had been raped as well, and that's what got Kate into self-defense. This is where Jessica's water finally breaks. The baby is born, she's healthy, she's sweet, everything's fine, dandy, hip and groovy, they name her Danielle, and it's just perfect. But here's the thing. The Daily Bugle recently ran a smear campaign against the new Avengers, so Jessica told the Daily Bugle that they couldn't have exclusive coverage of her baby anymore, and she refused to work for them. Then, shortly after this, Luke and Jessica get married, but Jessica stays Jessica Jones because, you know, she's modern and progressive. In Civil War, Iron Man and Ms. Marvel would come to Jessica and Luke and would be like, "So, you gonna register or are you gonna rebel?" And Jessica basically tells the both of them, "This law is fucked up and so are you, I'm peacing out to Canada." And then she pieces out to Canada. Then later on, Jessica registers because this war went on for so long and Jessica just wanted her life back. The issue was that Luke was a major part of the resistance at this point, so this effectively, temporarily split the two of them up. But then after Civil War was over, Jessica would have to become Jewel again, which did kind of repair a lot of the damage that was done there. And then Jessica would decide that she wants to become a hero again full time. So, her and Luke have to hire a nanny, and this is when they hire Squirrel Girl to look after her baby. And she decides that she's not going to stay as Jewel, she actually gets a new mantle called Power Woman. And this is not Marvel copying DC. Luke Cage's mantle is Power Man, Power Woman, they're married, it's a thing. This isn't entirely related to Jessica Jones, it's more of a Young Avengers thing, but I love the Young Avengers. So Children's Crusade would be a thing, and Jessica would be a bit of a background character in that. But in the background, in the final issue of Children's Crusade, Jessica is actually there when the Young Avengers become fully fledged Avengers, which I just thought was a really, really nice touch because she had been a player in their story in the background since the beginning. She would then work as an associate for the Mighty Avengers, attend Deadpool's wedding, and then just fall into the background and then into obscurity, and then she got her own Netflix series and now suddenly everyone loves her. I love Jessica Jones to pieces. I love that she doesn't pull any punches. I love that she's very blunt about everything. Like, if you discovered you could fly, you would swear a lot. I would. I swear a lot anyway. I'd swear more than that. I love Jessica to pieces, and because she has the media's attention now, I want her to break out of being a background character. I want her to have an R-rated comic. I want it to have fucks in it, both verbally and physically. I want it to be darker than her original run. Alias works because it tackled a few social issues that were beginning to be talked about at that time. It could do the same thing again, but show the darker side to those social issues, like Alias did. And I know a lot of you are going to ask, yes, I have watched the Netflix show. It's not a TV show, it's a glorified web series, so let's meet in the middle and call it a Netflix show. And I absolutely loved it. It's brilliant. It's Jessica Jones. It's Jessica Jones. Like, the character is Jessica Jones. Like, the story isn't Alias. If you want to understand Jessica Jones, you only need to read Alias. But seriously, it's just perfect. My only complaint is that Killgrave wasn't purple. Like, Killgrave is purple. He will always be the purple man in my mind. I love that it's smarter than everything else that Marvel has done adaptation-wise. I really, really like The Winter Soldier, and people complained that it made them think, and that was my main worry about Jessica Jones. But no, this one does make you think, and I love all the esoteric messages that are included in it. I love just how perfect it is, and I love how you can enjoy it even if you don't get it. Seriously, if you have not seen the Jessica Jones Netflix series yet, go and watch it. And if you haven't read Alias, I'll put links to MyComicShop.com down below to where you can get the comics in collected issues, because the individual issues have not been reprinted and they're very, very expensive. Okay guys, that is it for today. So what do you think of Jessica Jones? Please let me know in the comments down below. And also don't forget to thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more history videos. And also don't forget to like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, support the show by checking out my Patreon if you want to see bigger and better and more history videos. And also don't forget to subscribe to my gaming channel, my vlogging channel, and follow me on Twitch. My name is Faust, this has been Exploring Comics, and it is super effective.